here a second ago.
Turtles has a great martini later if you want, or beer. So there's a raffle. Oh, welcome to Tsunami. I've lived it's our 9th anniversary. We always have some kind of fun thing to begin it. And Izzy had an idea a few years back of going with it. It's been a lot of fun setting it up. A guy from Springfield, I won't mention his name, Leonard Sereno, came in today and told a joke. So I've got to be the MC here. Why? Most of you will probably know this. How do you know that toothbrushes were invented in Springfield?
How?
Anywhere else, they would have been called teeth brushes. Well, okay, and then this gentleman.
Methamphetamine joke.
Somebody stop me.
Too fast for me.
And then this gentleman here emailed the weekly and it didn't get in there. He kind of emailed a little interview and I read it. So this was one of his, to end one of his little raps. He says, well, why did, they were asking him about hippies. And he just said, why did the hippies move to Eugene? Because there's no jobs here. Yeah, somebody stop me. I've already heard that. Keep going. And with that, I'd just like to introduce Walker T. Bryan here, who has been one of our most loyal friends.
Good evening. I get to introduce the beatnik part. This was published in 1956. In 1956, the hit songs of the year, the top 25 were by Elvis. One was by the Platters. Who were the other cool people? Wasn't Pat Boone, he was on there. The Platters, okay, the Platters, Carl Perkins. The rest was by Gogi Grant, Wayward Wind, oh, Wayward Wind. Les Baxter doing The Poor People of Paris. Lisbon Antigua, which I never remember. Moonglow. The Rock and Roll Waltz by K-Star. Pat Boone. Harry Comino, Hot Diggity, Dog Diggity, Boom, What You Do to Me. So in the middle of all of that, this showed up. Oh, Green Door, which is a very cool song for an aspiring young beatnik like myself.
That was a movie.
Allen Ginsberg wrote this because he went, rather than going to jail for a minor offense, he went into a nut house. More material, better chance of survival there, I would suppose, in the short term. And he came out, anybody who's been up in the mountains for a while, comes down to town, knows how weird it looks. You know, imagine coming out of a place like that and looking at America, 1956. So it's my pleasure this evening to introduce Izzy. We did this a while ago. What did you say, 4 years ago?
4.5 years ago.
We did he did a reading of Howl at Shea Ray's on Kerouac's birthday. And when I heard he was going to do this, I was just excited because he ripped it up then. So it's my pleasure to introduce. With the, you guys got a name? The Beatnik 5 minus 2.
We can be Stone Cold Jazz minus 4.
That's it, Stone Cold Jazz. Yeah.
There was a fellow named Carl Solomon, and so he wrote this poem for Carl Solomon. And if you gentlemen are ready to proceed, I guess we can proceed, huh? Carl Solomon, I'm with you in Rockland, where you're madder than I am. I'm with you in Rockland, where you must feel very strange. I'm with you in Rockland, where you imitate the shade of my mother. I'm with you in Rockland, where you murdered your 12 secretaries. I'm I'm with you in Rockland where you laugh at this invisible humor. I'm with you in Rockland where we are great writers on the same dreadful typewriter. I'm with you in Rockland where your condition has become serious and is reported on the radio. I'm with you in Rockland where the faculties of the skull no longer admit the worms of the senses. I'm with you in Rockland where you drink the tea of the breasts of the spinsters of Utica. I'm with you in Rockland where you pun on the bodies of the nurses, the harpies of the Bronx. I'm with you in Rockland where you scream in a straitjacket that you're losing the game of actual ping pong of the abyss. I'm with you in Rockland where you bang on the catatonic piano. The soul is innocent and immortal and it should never die ungodly in an armed madhouse. I'm with you in Rockland where 50 more shocks will never return your soul to its body again. From its pilgrimage to a cross in the void. I'm with you in Rockland where you accuse your doctors of insanity and plot the Hebrew socialist revolution against the fascist national Golgotha. I'm with you in Rockland where you will split the heavens of Long Island and resurrect your living human Jesus from superhuman tomb. I'm with you in Rockland where there are 25,000 mad comrades all together singing the final stanzas of the International. I'm with you in Rockland where we hug and kiss the United States under our bed sheets. The United States that coughs all night and won't let us sleep. I'm with you in Rockland where we wake up electrified out of the coma by our own souls, airplanes roaring over the roof. They've come to drop angelic bombs. The hospital illuminates itself. Imaginary walls collapse. Oh, skinny legions run outside. Oh, star-spangled shock of mercy, the eternal war is here. Oh, victory, forget your underwear, we're free. I'm with you in Rockland in my dreams. You walk dripping from a sea journey on the highway across America in tears to the door of my cottage in the western night. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning with the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo of machinery and night, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high, sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz. Who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs, illuminated. Who passed through universities with radiant, cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake. Like tragedy among the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull. Who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall. Who got busted in their pubic beards, returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York. Who ate fire and paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death or purgatory their torsos night after night, with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol, cock, and endless balls. Incomparable blind streets of shuddering cloud and lightning in the mind, leaping toward poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green cemetery dawns, Wine drunkenness over the rooftop, storefront whirls of tea-head, joyride, neon, blinking traffic lights, sun, moon, and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusks of Brooklyn. Ash can ratings and the kind king light of mind, who chained themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Bronx on Benzedrine, until the noise of wheels and children brought them down, shuddering, mouth-rocked, and battered, bleak with rain, all drained to branch in the drear light of the zoo. Who sank all night in the submarine light of Bickford's, floated out and sat through the stale bare afternoon in desolate fugazis, listening to the crack of doom on the hydrogen jukebox. Who talked continuously 70 hours from park to pad to bar to Bellevue to museum to the Brooklyn Bridge. A lost battalion of platonic conversationalists jumping down the stoops, off fire escapes, off windowsills, off Empire State, out of the mood. Yakety, yakety, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes and eyeball kicks and shocks and hospitals and jails and wars. Whose whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights with brilliant eyes. Meet from the synagogue, cast on the pavement. Who vanished into nowhere's end, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall. Suffering eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines of China under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished room. Who wandered around and around at midnight in the railroad yard, wondering where to go, and went, leaving no broken hearts. Who lit cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through snow toward lonesome farms in Grandfather Night. Who studied Plotinus, Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy, and Kabbalah, because the cosmos instinctively vibrated under their feet in Kansas. Who loaned it through the streets of Idaho, seeking visionary Indian angels. Who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy. Who jumped in limousines with the Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight streetlight small town rain. Who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston, seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America and eternity. A hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa. Who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadow of dungarees and the lava of ash and poetry scattered in fireplace Chicago. Who reappeared on the West Coast, investigating the FBI, in beards and shorts with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets. Who burned cigarette holes in their arms, protesting the neurotic tobacco haze of capitalism. Who distributed super communist pamphlets in Union Square, weeping and undressing, while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed them down, and wailed down Wall Street. And the Staten Island Ferry also wailed. Who broke down crying in white gymnasiums, naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons. Who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking. Pederasty. And intoxication. who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof, waving genitals and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who blew and were blown by the human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of Atlantic and Caribbean love, who boiled in the morning and the evenings in rose gardens and the grass of public parks and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whomever come who may, who hiccuped endlessly, trying to giggle, but wound up with a sob behind the partition in a Turkish battle when the blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their love boys to the three old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew, the heterosexual dollar, the one-eyed shrew that winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip the intellectual golden threads of the craftsman's loom. Who copulated in static and insatiate with a bottle of beer, a sweetheart, a package of cigarettes, a candle, and fell off the bed, continued along the floor and down the hall, and ended fading on the wall with a vision of alternate cut and come, eluding the last jism of consciousness, who sweetened the snatches of a million girls trembling in the sunset and were red-eyed in the morning, but prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks under bonds and naked in the lake. Went out whoring through Colorado in myriad stolen night cars. Neil Cassidy, secret hero of these poems, Coxman and Adonis of Denver, joy to the memory of his innumerable lays of girls in empty lots and diner backyards, movie houses, rickety roads, on mountaintops, in caves, or with gaunt waitresses in familiar roadside lonely petticoat upliftings, and especially secret gas station solipsisms of John's and hometown alleys too, who faded out into vast, sordid movies, were shifted in dreams, woke on a sudden Manhattan and picked themselves up out of basements, hung over with heartless Tokay, and the horrors of Third Avenue iron dreams, and stumbled to unemployment offices, who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank docks, waiting for a door in the East River to open to a room full of steam heat and opium, who created great suicidal dramas on the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson under the wartime blue floodlight of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurel in oblivion, who ate the lamb stew of the imagination or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the rivers of Bowery, who wept at the romance of the streets with their pushcarts full of onions and bad music, who sat in boxes breathing in the darkness under the bridge and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts, who coughed on the 6th floor of Harlem, crowned with flame under the tubercular sky, surrounded by orange crates of theology, who scribbled all night, rocking and rolling over lofty incantations, which in the morning were nothing but stanzas of gibberish, who cooked rotten animals in lung, heart, field, tail, borscht, and tortillas, dreaming of the pure animal vegetable kingdom, who plunged themselves under meat traps looking for an egg, who threw their watches off the roof to cast their ballot for eternity outside of time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every morning for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successively, unsuccessfully, gave up, and were forced to open antique stores when they thought they were growing old, and cried, who were burned alive in their innocent flannel suits on Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden bursts and the tanked-up clutter of the iron regiments of flesh and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising and the mustard gas of sinister, intelligent editors, or were run down by the absolute taxicabs of reality. This actually happened, and walked away, unknown and forgotten, into the ghostly days of Chinatown, soup alleyways and fire trucks. Not even one free beer. Who sang out of their windows in despair, fell out of the subway window, jumped in the filthy Passaic, leaped on Negroes, cried all over the street, danced on broken wine glasses barefoot, smashed phonographs of nostalgic European 1930s German jazz, finished the whiskey, and threw up, groaning into the bloody toilet, moans in their ears, and the blast of colossal steam whistles. Who barreled down the highways of the past, journeying to each other's hot rod goth Golgotha jail solitude watch or Birmingham jazz incarnation. Who drove cross country 72 hours to find out if I had a vision, or you had a vision, or he had a vision, to find out eternity. Who journeyed to Denver, who died in Denver, who came back to Denver and waited in vain, who watched over Denver and brooded and loaned in Denver and finally went away to find out the time. And now Denver is lonesome for her heroes, who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals, praying for each other's salvation and lightened breaths under the soul illuminated its hair for a second, who crashed through their minds in jail, waiting for impossible criminals with golden heads and the charm of reality in their hearts, who sang sweet blues to Alcatraz, who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, or Rocky Mountain to tender Buddha, or Tangiers to Boys, or Southern Pacific to the Black Locomotive, or Harvard to Narcissus to Woodline, to the Daisy Chain or the grave, who demanded sanity trials, accusing the radio of hypnotism, and were left with their insanity in their hands and a hung jury, who threw potato salad at CCNY lecturers on Dadaism, and subsequently presented themselves on the granite steps of the madhouse with shaven heads and harlequin speech of suicide, demanding instantaneous lobotomy, and who were given instead the concrete void of insulin, metrazole, electricity, hydrotherapy, psychotherapy, occupational therapy, ping pong, and amnesia, who in humanist protest overturned only one symbolic ping pong table, resting briefly in catatonia, returning years later truly bald except for a wig of blood and tears and fingers, to the visible madman doom of the wards and the mad towns of the east. Pilgrim states, rockrooms, greystones, petted halls, bickering with the echoes of the soul, rocking and rolling in the midnight solitude bench dolmen realms of love. Dream of life a nightmare. Bodies turned to stone as heavy as the moon. With mother finally. And the last fantastic book flung out of the tenement window, and the last door closed at 4 a.m. and the last telephone slammed at the wall in reply, and the last furnished room emptied down to the last piece of mental furniture. A yellow paper rose twisted on a wire hanger in the closet. And even that, imaginary, nothing but a hopeful little bit of hallucination. Ah, Carl, while you are not safe, I am not safe. And now you're really in the total animal soup of time. And who therefore ran through the icy streets obsessed with the sudden flash of the alchemy and the use of the ellipse, the catalog, the meter, and the vibrating plane. Who dreamt and made incarnate gasps in time and space through his juxtaposed and trapped the archangel of the soul between two visual images and joined the elemental verbs and set the noun and dash of consciousness together, jumping with sensation of pater omnipotens, eterna deus. To recreate the syntax and measure of poor human prose and stand before you speechless and intelligent and shaking with shame. Rejected, yet confessing out the soul to conform to the rhythm of thought in his naked and endless head. The madman, bum, and angel beat in time. Unknown, yet putting down here what might be left to say in time come after death. And rose reincarnate in the ghostly close of jazz, in the gold horn shadow of the band, and blew the suffering of America's naked mind for love into an Eli, Eli, Lama Sabatani saxophone cry that shivered the cities down to the last radio. With the absolute heart of the poem of life butchered out of their own bodies, good to eat for 1,000 years. Thank you. For weddings and bar mitzvahs, this is David Rhodes on the saxophone. Kenny Reed on the drums, Stone Cold Jazz. And of course the undeniable Eric Richardson on the bass. All of them the product of respectable homes. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty soon you're going to have Mr. Babs up here.